if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know the idea. Tension in musicians isn't a strength or flexibility problem. It's a coordination problem. The trying itself is what's making everything worse. So let's say you get this intellectually, but you're probably wondering, okay, so what do I actually do about it? What happens in a session? What changes and how fast? My name is Joseph Arnold. I'm a professional violinist and certified Alexander technique teacher. I've been doing this work with musicians for over 20 years. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through what actually happens when a musician comes to work with me. Not just the theory, the real shifts that occur. And by the end, you'll know whether this is something that could help you. So let me start first with what a session looks like, what the first session looks like, because it's probably not what you expect. So yes, we start by talking. I want to hear your story. I want to hear your history, everything you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't. I'll have you show me, your playing, your technique on your instrument. And this is all very important information. I need to understand your specific situation and your history before we do anything else. But then we put the instrument down and I teach you about habits. Now, a habit is something that's repeated, it's automated, it's unconscious, it's learned, and eventually it becomes part of your identity. You don't think about how to hold a pen anymore. You don't think about how to sit or play your instrument. These patterns are so deeply learned that they feel like just you being you. But they're not you. They're habits, and habits can change. So this is the first shift. Realizing that the tension you carry isn't really part of who you are. It's something you learned, and it's been running on autopilot ever since. And once that lands, I teach you the magic pause and my other mind-body methods, but I'll talk about the magic pause today. So we learn it through a simple 3-part arm movement: hands in front of your chest, hands over your head, hands on your lap. That's it, nothing fancy. But we're just doing an experiment here. So here's where it gets interesting. So first I have you do the movement without any pausing, and I ask you what I call the golden question. The question I ask more than any other: what do you notice? What's actually happening in your body right now? Are you getting tighter or freer? So this is the baseline. All right, so then we do it again, but this time with a pause before every movement. A real pause. And this is not like get ready. This is not take a breath. This is not try to relax. This is just a moment where you refrain from doing the next thing for a couple seconds. And then I ask again, what do you notice now? Do you get tighter or freer? And almost everyone is surprised. This is why I call it the magic pause. They feel lighter. They feel more spacious. Their arms move more easily, more curvaceously. And nothing really external changed. I didn't adjust them. I didn't give them an exercise. I didn't teach them a better position. The only thing that changed was a moment of not doing before the doing. As one Alexander technique teacher, Marge Barstow, used to say, it's amazing what a little bit of nothing will do. And this is what I mean by the magic pause. It's not a relaxation technique. Relaxation can be its own kind of effort. Trying to relax is still trying. The pause is much simpler than that. It's just, you know what you're about to do, but you just don't do it quite yet. Instead of directing your body from your ego and your willpower, you let your body figure it out on its own, which it does every time, better and more effortlessly than your ego could ever manage. And then we go to the instrument. We want to find out, does this feel different when you play, right? So I'll have the student play something challenging where they know that they usually get tight. And then I ask again, what do you notice? A guitarist recently who I work with had been dealing with hand pain for years, his right hand, and after learning the pause away from the guitar, we picked up the instrument and tried it before a chord change. And something remarkable happened. His whole body softened, his hand softened, his whole body softened. Not because I told it to, not because he stretched or exercised or, he told his hand, exerting willpower, but because the bracing pattern that was feeding his hand tension got interrupted at the source. He felt the difference immediately. And so this is why we always play in the first session. I want my students to have something tangible to take home and work with. You need to feel it in your own body with your own instrument, or else it's just a nice idea, right? So all throughout this, I'm having a dialogue with the student. When they report back something I notice, I reflect it back, helping them interpret what it means in terms of movement quality. What does that lightness in your arms tell you about what you've been playing, and tell you about your habits, the usual way you've been playing? And what does that ease, for this passage mean about what you've been struggling with? So what might it mean for your life beyond music? This is a big question. The student and I are building understanding together. And so this is what typically happens in the first session. I'll also give you homework, tangible things to practice throughout the day. So what happens next depends on the student. So in later sessions, we start with a review. What do you notice during the week? What are your big questions, challenges, what's changed, all this kind of thing. And sometimes a student comes in with a burning question, a specific challenge, a passage that won't come together, a pain that flared up, this kind of thing, an audition approaching, and then we tailor the session to that. But at other times, I'll introduce a new mind-body exploration, open focus, or 2% easier, or easy breathing, or the doing mode versus the being mode. So these are all different ways of approaching the relationship between, thinking and movement. So the structure is always the same. We explore it first away from the instrument, then we bring it to the instrument, and I give you homework. And I'm always asking, what do you notice? So another example, a cellist I worked with was kind of grinding on a passage for weeks, playing with an orchestra, and when we paused before the hard section, she noticed something, this tiny little movement. She was pushing her head forward and down, like this, right before the challenging section, right? It's like a preparatory flinch, what I call anticipatory tension. But when she refrained from that one movement, the passage played itself. Her fingers and arms knew what to do. Of course, they'd always known. Your body already knows how to play this stuff. The tension was the interference and not the solution. So she described it as the trying just stopped. And then the music was just there. And this is really the core of what I teach about in the Soulforce Arts approach. Your body already knows how to play your instrument. The tension you're carrying isn't making you more effective, it's interfering. And when you learn to recognize and release it, the playing that emerges is better than anything you could force. But the shift that surprises most people is that it doesn't stay in the practice room. It shows up everywhere. So one student, he started, doing the pause when he's turning doorknobs and opening jars and writing with a pen and, talking, the tension patterns and then the ease. This wasn't just a guitar situation, it was a whole life situation. He was bringing that tension pattern that was making his injuries to his whole life, right? And it just so happened to express very painfully through guitar. But once he could see it everywhere. And once he could pause before it, during anything, everything got easier, and including his playing. And there was less strain on his body, so the injury started to go away. So another student, a pianist working on Rachmaninoff, told me, with a pause, I just execute, and there's no tension, right? It's the trying to get it right that causes the tension, not the execution itself. That's what he said. So the insight, that insight doesn't just change for Rachmaninoff, it changes how he approaches everything. This is a whole life lesson, right? So this is what I mean as well when I say I don't teach standard Alexander technique. I draw on it, certainly. It's foundational to what I do, but I also integrate frameworks from psychology and neuroscience. And so when a student's tension has an emotional component, and it usually does, we work with that directly, not like therapy, but as a part of the coordination picture. The part of you that braces before a hard passage is the same part that braces before a hard conversation. It's all the same thing. You are a unified system. So now, here's who this work is for and who it's not for. So this work is for you if you've tried the conventional approaches, stretches, exercises, ergonomic adjustments, and maybe physical therapy, chiropractic, but the attention always keeps coming back. It's for you if you suspect the problem is deeper than mere mechanics or structural problems with your body. It's for musicians who are tired of fighting their bodies and who want to understand why the fighting started in the first place. Now, this is not a quick fix. The first session often produces a noticeable shift, sometimes very dramatic, like one of my students whose pain dropped 95% in a single session. But lasting change, even for students like that, takes repetition. You're rewiring a pattern that's been running for years, your whole life, right? So my goal is to give you enough tools, I teach like over 20 of these, to handle any situation that comes up and to guide you back to your own body awareness enough times so that you don't need me anymore. All right, so some students get what they need in the first series of lessons and they're good. They have all the tools, they know how to use them, and they're off, right? And others have stayed with me for over 10 years because they keep discovering new layers, playing more freely, more expressively, right? There's no one right path here. It depends on what you're after. So this is also not for someone who just wants a stretch routine or an exercise program. And if that's what you're looking for, there are plenty of other great resources for that. But what I do is different. We change the underlying pattern so the stretches become unnecessary. Right? So everything happens online via Zoom call or in person if you're near Asheville, North Carolina. You bring your instrument. Every session is recorded so you can rewatch it, and a lot of my students do because the lessons can be quite counterintuitive. They run against how you've been operating your whole life in many cases, although they do have the ring of truth. You'll notice that. So, but they all tell me that the insights land deeper, when they listen back. So the recording is a feature of the lessons, not just a consolation prize for not being in person. So here's what you can do if you're interested. We start with a free 20-minute discovery call, links below. I learn about your situation, you'll learn about the approach, and we see if it's a fit. All right, there's no pitch, no pressure. I genuinely want to make sure this is right for you before we start, okay? So if any of this resonated, the link to a discovery call is in the description below. If you want to experience a taste of this work first, I can run a free weekly group called the Musicians Tension Reset Lab. The link for that is also below. So leave a comment and tell me what tension pattern you suspect you have but haven't been able to see clearly. All right, how does it actually show up in your body? And I read every comment and I'll respond with my honest take on your situation. Okay, I think that's all for today. So please like and subscribe. It helps these videos reach the people who need them. And that's really important for my mission. I want to be able to change the face of music education, not just the face, the substance of music education. So we're not just, giving lip service to the ease and the soul, the heart and soul that are really necessary for Soulforce. Not just giving that lip service, but actually learning the skills, the effortlessness skills, the playing from the heart skills that can really help you express your soul force in a masterful way, whatever mastery looks like for you. All right. So that's my mission in this life. And you can help me reach there, reach that by liking, subscribing, sending this to somebody who might need it. Okay, see you next time.